thereby staying in office. Tonight we're going to talk about something called the living wage. Not the minimum wage now, but a living wage. Is that what de Tocqueville had in mind? Maybe, maybe not. You might be part of this debate tonight, but there are several definitions of a living wage depending on where you live. Even the name, of course, living wage, is a loaded proposition, as is just about everything else in this proposition and just about everything else in politics these days. Witness Tom Amiano of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors tonight explaining why he thinks this is a good idea.
For San Francisco, it's a difficult place to live, and we have so many low-wage workers. In other words, rents are high, childcare is high, medical is high, that most people in San Francisco, particularly those who are making under even sometimes the minimum wage, have a very difficult time having a full life. They either have to work 2 or 3 jobs or sometimes go on welfare. And so the living wage concept is a way to bring people up to par in terms of having more than a subsistence lifestyle, particularly people, but not exclusively, with children. Again, San Francisco, it is very difficult to live on anything less than a living wage. So these meetings tonight and then also at an official task force are going to hammer out what amount a living wage would be, how that plays off the city's budget, where we might get some other funds. So and also the scope, who will it cover, and all that is yet to be determined. I'm very excited about it. It's been done in other cities. We just have to make it a perfect fit for San Francisco. All the supervisors are favorable to a living wage. They've all gone on record to that. What the amount and the scope will be the issue for the supervisors. And I'm going to be introducing a draft legislation on this issue 2 weeks from now, next Monday. And then from there, it will go to even further public hearings involving all the supervisors, and hopefully we'll craft something that we can all live with.
Well, how would establishing a living wage help or hurt San Francisco? Who will benefit from it? Who should pay for it? How do you think it will impact companies that do business with the city? A motion is allowed here, since that's how the proposition starts. Join our discussion with your thoughts, 1-800-94-BayTV, or on the internet at www.baytv.com, and click on the Take Issue queue. Tonight, I'm joined by 2 gentlemen who both own businesses in San Francisco, but disagree on the costs and benefits of the living wage issue. Barry Hermanson is co-chair of San Francisco's Living Wage Coalition. He's owner and operator of Hermanson's Employment Services of San Francisco. Next to him is Scott Hauge. He's the CEO of San Francisco's Small Business Network. He is the president and owner of Cal Insurance and Associates Incorporated, and welcome to you both tonight. Over the past 5 years, 21 cities nationwide have adopted a living wage of one sort or another, including Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland. How is this working out for those cities? Do we know?
I think it's still a little too early to tell. I did hear tonight at the public hearing that's happening at City Hall right now, a woman who participated in a very recent study in Baltimore, and there they claim there has been no effect.
Now, one of the problems with that, and in just reading up on this the last couple of days, is that this has been such a boom that it's difficult to find workers in many different positions, so it's difficult to tell now. And what some people are arguing is you're going to have to wait to see until we have a downturn, and then you might get a better measure of what's going on. But that said, what does your side think of this idea?
Well, first of all, I'd like to go back to the original question.
Sure, please do.
While there was one study in Baltimore that was very positive, the Economic Policy Institute came out with a different set of findings. So I think Barry's right when he said it's a little early at this point. The other aspect is San Francisco's living wage is different than the other living wages. First of all, in all the others, it's a city proposal. This is a city-county, so it makes it different. It also applies to purchasing agreements where it doesn't apply like that around the country. The minimum amount is higher right now than it is around the country, so it's a little difficult to judge exactly.
Do we have an idea of where they'll be going with this in terms of what it will be set at? We've continually heard the figure of $14.5, but many cities in the Bay Area have one that is substantially lower than that. That would seem high, would be more than double the minimum wage. So where does this stand?
Well, that particular number, $14.50, came out of a study from the Association of Bay Area Governments. And it is the figure that is necessary for a single parent, one child, to live in San Francisco. And I think that's a good place to begin the discussions, because that is a living wage.
All right, that raises a number of issues. For instance, is that why we're doing this for a single parent with one child? Is that why we would be doing this kind of thing based on the total population of the city and so on? How does a living wage differ from a minimum wage in your view, Barry?
Well, we are saying for anybody who contracts with the city in County of San Francisco, as long as you are using taxpayer dollars, that we expect that the employees will be making a living wage. Because if they are not, there is a taxpayers do have to subsidize all of the additional costs and services that employee would require as a result of making a minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage. There was an article in the LA Times in 1996 that indicated that for every minimum wage job that is created, $8,600 in taxpayer assistance is required for that person to make ends meet. I expect that actually it's even greater than that here.
Your response to this?
Well, I think it takes away from the market realities. I think the idea that San Francisco contrived the market, given our economy goes beyond just the boundaries of San Francisco. It's a regional, state, national, international economy. And for San Francisco to set a minimum wage or living wage based on San Francisco prices and feel that it can drive the market and hold that without having an adverse impact on the cost of government and also the cost for businesses is very significant.
We are though looking at it, Bay Area. It's expensive to live in the Bay Area,
right.
Not just San Francisco.
Barry, economists, and I don't know how many economists are involved in this discussion. I mean the actual discussion, not the one going on here. But economists would look at this and say, look, some of the reasons why it is expensive to live in the city is we have some of the largest public employee roles in the country. They are the highest paid public employees in the country. We, in a series of steps all through the economy, demand this kind of thing because government essentially is setting these kinds of wages and private business follows that lead. Wouldn't this just exacerbate that problem? Wouldn't we, in fact, increase taxes, increase the price of products and so on to fit this living wage?
I don't think so. It's to try to blame this all on salaries of public employees. I just don't think that that's a reasonable argument at all. We have so many people that are living below the poverty line. If we say even across this country that 20% of our children are living in poverty right now, that's a problem. And I don't think that we can say, hey, by taking money away from public employees, that's going to solve that problem or change the economy of this at all.
The question of how economics work in this thing is fascinating and depends on where you go with this. But why isn't the free market working to do what the city and county now says it wants to do?
Well, again, you've got to define the market, and the market goes beyond the borders of San Francisco. Also, consumers are going to be looking at cost and the way the living wage has been set up, and it is going to be negotiated and discussed, and there will be changes. But as it's been presented right now, you have some very, very difficult situations whereby if you're a business in San Francisco and you get a contract or you have a purchasing agreement, all your employees are going to have to pay or be paid the living wage, where if you've got a contractor outside of San Francisco, the only place it's going to apply is to the work that's being done in San Francisco. You also have, even if that were addressed, if you're renting property or if you're receiving a tax credit, and there's a jobs tax credit where if you create a new job, you get a tax credit, you're going to be subject to this minimum wage, and it puts San Francisco businesses at a disadvantage from other businesses outside of San Francisco.
Well, of course, there's the question of how this what will go into paying for this, and it's kind of a complicated formula, at least the ones suggested so far. We're going to talk about that concept. What do you think of all this? 1-800-94-BayTV.
Hollywood's hottest to the Bay Area's best. BayTV's Talkin' Pictures is going live. Join film critic Jan Wall for a talk with the stars, a first look at new films. Got an opinion? Don't keep it under your hat. Speak up and call in. Before you get your weekend movie fix, be sure to catch Jan's Movie Picks. Talking Pictures, live Friday night at 8. Or see it again Saturday at 8, Sunday at 7 on BayTV, Your TV, Cable Channel 35.
On Biography, you never know whom you'll meet.
Can we talk? We have nothing to fear.
I get no respect. A&E's crown jewel, fascinating nonfiction. Increasingly popular, excellent. Monday through Saturday, watch A&E's Biography and escape the ordinary.
Biography is brought to you by your Lincoln Mercury dealer. Lincoln, what a luxury car should be.
Future Paging and Cellular, with 30 locations in the Bay Area, offers you a wireless solution at the lowest possible price. Future is proud to be appointed as the authorized agent for GTE, Nextel, and Sprint PCS. This month featuring Mitsuki Clio for only $69, including pager activation, unlimited pages, and 1-year airtime. Hurry, offer ends soon, so go to your nearest Future stores today or call 1-800-371-7927.
You've seen Dinner and a Movie Friday nights on TBS. Well, now you can enter to win Dinner and a Movie for 2 at Lake Tahoe. Grand prize includes 3 nights at Harrah's Lake Tahoe, South Shore's highest-rated hotel casino, dinner on the fabulous MS Dixie 2, skiing at Heavenly Valley, and a movie. Mail a postcard with your name, address, and phone to TBS Dinner and a Movie at Lake Tahoe, P.O. Box 26292, San Francisco, California, 94126. Sponsored by TBS Superstation and the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority.
It's a small step to changing the widening wage gap in this country, where rich people get richer and poor people get poorer. Jim DuPont, President, Hotel Restaurant Employees, Local 2850. Jim is right, absolutely right. There is a widening wage gap. All the studies indicate that. Rich people are getting richer. Poor people are also getting richer. Jim is wrong about that. He's wrong about it on a yearly basis, on a decade-wide basis as well. The federal government has just released another series of statistics which show that quite clearly. But we have these ideas about the way the economy works. That said, how would the living wage law impact the city? I think the better question is who would be impacted by this?
I want to just get back to your presumption there. I believe that poor people, they are getting poorer. And if we take a look at the minimum wage in this country during the last 30 years, it's documented that it has lost more than 30% of its value just in relationship to inflation. Now, nationally it's $5.15 an hour, and in California it's $5.75. If we factored in inflation over the last 30 years, it should be $7.50 an hour now. In a recent KQED Forum series,
well, go ahead.
Roberta Achtenberg, who is the public policy person for the Chamber of Commerce here in San Francisco, agreed with the fact she did not know how anyone could live on minimum wage, not only here in San Francisco, but anywhere in California.
You do know that the people living on minimum wage, approximately 70% of them are part-time workers, most of them under the age of 22.
I don't believe that that is true, Pete.
Well, I
really don't believe
that's what the government statistics say. I mean, we have to try to deal with reality on these things. Emotionally, it is a very difficult subject. I'm not arguing about whether the living wage should go up or down or the minimum wage. I'm just saying that's a fact, and it's been a fact since the 60s. It remains so regardless of what the wage is now. Of course, it's impacted by a number of other things. Who would be impacted, in your view? Who would be impacted here? Is it city workers? Is it the private workers who contract with the city? What happens?
Well, clearly, the business community is going to be impacted by the additional cost. Anybody, nonprofits are clearly going to be impacted because they would be subject to paying them the minimum wage or the living wage. And if the nonprofits are impacted, people that they are serving, home health care and a number of other services, by analogy, are going to be impacted also.
Barry, how many? That's really true. As I said, I just came from the meeting at City Hall, a hearing on the need for living wage. There are thousands of people working in this city, working full-time as home health care workers, and they're making $7 an hour. There are thousands of people that are working out at San Francisco Airport and handling our baggage. They are working in the rental car places. They are doing all the dishwashing and catering for the airline food. They're making $6.50 to $7, maybe $7.50.
And you're going to more than double that. that has to impact somebody. So
it does have to impact people. I think it's, though, important to begin to take a look at what is a living wage, because if you have people that are forced to work 2 jobs and they can never see their children as a result, you know, they're working 70 to 80 hours a week. Now, is that fair? That is just not fair.
But I think the question, I think most businesses and most people would agree that if the economics were there and the market was there to pay $14.50 an hour, which is being proposed, that they would be paid that. The market doesn't allow that possibility, and certainly it can't be driven in San Francisco.
Betty in San Francisco, thanks for joining us. Go ahead. Betty, are you there?
Then a question.
Yes.
Years ago, when I lived in Washington, D.C., and my husband worked for the federal government, it never failed that any time they got a raise, the cost of everything went up, from food to clothing to you name it. Now, won't that happen here? And if not, how can they prevent it? You get more money, you're charged more money.
Betty, good question.
I heard last week that there's, number one, there's going to be a march on April 10th, United Farm Workers and support of the strawberry workers. And somebody told me that if we paid a nickel more for a basket of strawberries, that effectively would double the wages of a strawberry worker.
Right.
Now, is that very difficult for people to be able to absorb? I think not.
But you know that there are other aspects of that, and you're absolutely correct about that. In fact, the lettuce is even more striking, that you could double the wages. And we've talked about that endlessly. But the problem is that we allow huge numbers of people from a far lower level economic system to come in to do those jobs. If we stopped doing that, economists have argued endlessly, if we stopped doing that, the right and the left got together and said we're not going to do that, the prices would rise, the wages would rise.
I don't think, again, you can blame it all on immigration.
I'm not blaming.
I've got a lot of people.
Victim thing. I'm saying that that's the practical aspect. That 90% of the picking in this state is done by immigration.
Anytime that we talk about even making minimal increases in the minimum wage, the business community is right out there in front saying that this is just not something that we can do. It's just not economically possible. And just small, we have to fight for small increases. And I maintain without that minimum, we would have a race to the bottom line.
The argument about fairness is...
Can I just quickly...
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a minimum wage right now, $5.75.
Right.
We're talking regardless, we're going from $5.75 to $14.50. We're not talking about a minimal change here.
And there may be a number of reasons for that. But the issue of fairness, of compassion, of morality is a very important one in this argument. There was virtually, in that minute bite that Tom Amiano had, there wasn't one of those things that he didn't bring up several times. How do you respond to people who say, look, folks are struggling here? What do you do?
My response to that would be is if someone cannot afford to stay in business and they would be put out of business, that you're not doing anybody any favors by eliminating jobs. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be paid a wage, but that's going to be driven by the market. And if you increase it to $14.50, and that is outside of what the market forces are, you're going to force one of two things. One, they go out of business, they eliminate people, or they move.
All right, let's get Barry to respond to that. We'll be right back. 1-800-94-BAY-TV.
The Chippewa Cree are taught that water is sacred. It's the source of everything. I go to college to study environmental science. I'm investigating the toxicity in our water supply, but it's not just a science project. If I can help save my land, maybe I can help save my people. Why did you go to college?
The American Indian College Fund, educating the mind and spirit.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report. Millbrae Furniture on El Camino is having their once-in-a-blue moon sample sale. Sofas, bedroom sets, recliners, entertainment center, dinette sets, and more. Save up to 60% off retail on everything in stock. Don't forget to check out Millbrae Furniture's Bargain Basement Deals. This super sample sale is 2 days only, Saturday and Sunday, March 20th and 21st. They've extended their hours on Sunday from 10 to 4. Don't miss great savings on quality merchandise at Millbrae Furniture on El Camino. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
It doesn't get any fresher than this. Good food, great prices. Enjoy our nightly dinner specials and select from 15 different dinners, all priced at $9.95. The Silver Cloud Restaurant. Come, enjoy yourself.
Come enjoy San Francisco's finest golf practice and learning facility, Mission Bay Golf Center. You'll find professional instruction for every level and every facet of the game. And you can count on the guaranteed lowest prices at the Golf Mart. If you've always wanted to take up golf, call or come in today and ask about our fantastic beginner value program. Over 20 hours of available instruction for only $99. Mission Bay Golf Center, where San Francisco learns to golf.
I've thought about, the minimum that I would have to make to support my lifestyle, which is not extravagant, and it's a little bit more than that. So, yeah, I'd say that's something to support. I mean, obviously not for fast food.
I think it's an interesting idea, but I'm concerned about the fiscal impact on companies that are trying to do business. I also think it may increase the unemployment rate.
I think in San Francisco, because it's so expensive to live here, $14.50 without benefits is definitely... it's reasonable, and it's an adequate wage for most people to get.
Of course, you could have stayed in Northern Ireland and saw what it was there, but it's an entirely different thing, which is my next question. You don't have to live here, do you?
Well, I think some of us do have to live here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's... I don't think that this can be a town of just senior executives and all. There's been a lot in the news lately about gentrification in San Francisco.
Barry, you're not saying that it's just senior executives and poor people in this town.
Right.
There are very few poor people in this town in comparison to most other cities in the country.
There are a lot of poor people.
But there are poor people in this town.
A lot of poor people in this town.
Yeah.
The folks that have been putting together this legislation, you mentioned earlier, concern about the jobs, and no one wants to see services cut or jobs cut as a result of this legislation. And so what I think we have to do is really spend some time to find out where can we find the money that will pay for this. And I think that we need to begin to take a look at some of our priorities.
Right, which is where I want to go with this.
Okay.
All right. Business assumes it's going to come from them. It doesn't have to. It can be spread out over 750,000 people.
Well, you're assuming, though, that San Francisco businesses and businesses outside of San Francisco, those that are impacted within San Francisco by the living wage, are going to be able to pass that cost on. And the reality of life is the consumer is going to look at the cost of the product, and while we may not like it, the bottom line is they will choose a cheaper product made by somebody out of town, and if they've got lower cost, it puts San Francisco businesses at a disadvantage. And you have two issues here. When you have the cost, generally you're talking about the cost of city government and the increase, and that's one side of the equation. And the other is that the businesses are going to have to pick up the cost or make adjustments accordingly.
What about that?
That is an argument that has been used over and over again in every city across this country for all minimum wage discussions, et cetera. We can't compete with foreign labor. And we've lost a lot of our manufacturing jobs already. I think if we have people working at the airport, for instance, that are making low wage rates, is United Airlines going to pick up and go to other city? They're going to work, they're going to stay here, they're going to work here. They have to have so many people working here. People are still going to want to rent cars at the airport. If you're going to be out there and you might want to have something to eat, it really isn't that much more expensive to pay people. I walked by a fast food restaurant the other day. It was offering 29-cent hamburgers. Well, I really wonder, to go back to that nickel analogy, if the burger was 34 cents instead of 29, how much would that affect the employees' pay?
Let's go to Tom in Santa Rosa. Thanks for joining us, Tom. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. This discussion reminds me a whole lot of what I heard in the Congress every time they raise the minimum wage. It's one side claiming that it's going to cost jobs, sending us into a depression, recession, inflation will go hog wild, and it never has yet. It never has yet. That's just a fallacy. When the minimum
but there's a
wage
difference
goes up,
between raising. But Tom, is there a difference between raising it $1 and raising it $8?
That would be another question. There might be room for a compromise there.
Okay.
And when you say, I heard you mention earlier that 70% of the people in the country that make minimum wage are either part-timers or under 22 years of age.
Correct. Yes. That's a House Ways and Means Committee figure from like 2 weeks ago.
I understand that, but that's an average. Now those come from micro business areas such as college towns.
Right.
You've got a lot of minority groups that's all they ever make. And I would hate to see San Francisco without the labor force. Who would do all these things that, I mean, I remember a time when the large corporate farms not only accepted immigrant workers, but actively campaigned to go get them,
Well, absolutely, Tom, and that's what we were talking about before, with letting the market do this job, but we don't do that. Instead, we find people who will take this minimum wage because they're used to much less in a different country or elsewhere, and as a consequence, right now we're in full employment. We can't even find that. Let me ask you about this, Barry. This notion of it's not fair. Who decides if it's fair or if it isn't fair?
I think if you look, the minimum wage was really established because the marketplace wasn't doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
It sets a minimum level that says it's acceptable, and I think the early stages of what was it, in the early 1900s when this was established, the minimum wage was much more closely tied to what is actually a livable wage, and those discussions kind of developed together. Today, you see how far out of whack it is. We have a minimum wage here, and we are saying a livable wage is way up here. An enormous gap, which I think
in San Francisco.
It's actually across the country, because we say $7.50 should be the minimum wage across the whole country. That's still a pretty big gap. And you see how far we have to go just to reach that, and all the years of fighting against raising wages because it's supposedly bad for business, it's bad for our economy, it will lose jobs. We are getting further and further behind, and I maintain that as a result of that, we as taxpayers are having to pay more and more and more in public services to support people who cannot afford health care, they can't afford child care, they cannot afford to feed themselves. People are in homeless shelters who are working full-time. They have full-time jobs, and they cannot afford the basic things that you and I take for granted.
Let's take a break. 1-800-94-BayTV.
Spirit of high school sports, the Sunday Examiner and Chronicle Sports Show, every Saturday morning at 11:30 on BayTV, your TV, cable channel 35.
Once again, the Subaru Forester has outperformed the competition, earning the highest overall rating of vehicles tested in its class in a recent crash test. But the real beauty of the Forester is that it can help you avoid accidents altogether by automatically transferring power from the wheels that split to the wheels that grip for maximum control. Subaru Forester, the beauty of all-wheel drive. Drive the Forester, rated highest overall of vehicles tested in its class at your Subaru dealer.
Need to open an IRA fast, but you just can't get away? Call Schwab and ask for IRA overnight.
FedEx!
It comes with a simple do-it-yourself kit and FedEx delivery at no charge.
Hi, FedEx!
So now you can open an IRA quickly, painlessly,
Pizza!
and from the comfort of home.
It all began with a solid form design and is achieving some very solid results. Presenting the most solid Pontiac Grand Am ever. In USAC tests against the competition, Grand Am comes out the solid winner. And now, Grand Am comes with the most solid deal ever. For a limited time, get 0% financing for 36 months. That's solid. The 99 Pontiac Grand Am. See it at your Pontiac dealer today.
We're back. We're talking about a living wage, the living wage idea, which is now law in about 21 cities, but the city and county of San Francisco, that does change the proposition slightly, but the city and county of San Francisco is considering a living wage. In fact, the argument tonight. We have two guests, Barry Hermanson of San Francisco's Living Wage Coalition. Scott Hagee is a CEO at Hagee, I'm sorry, Scott. It's from the San Francisco Small Business Network, who is opposed to this idea. Yes, please do.
Because I have not said that I'm opposed to a living wage. What I've said is that there needs to be adjustments, there need to be market force recognitions taken into account when this wage is set. So.
As a percentage of their income, as a percentage, the citizens of the city of San Francisco are among the highest taxed citizens in the United States when you include federal taxes, state taxes, and the local taxes in San Francisco. Will taxes be part of this? The San Francisco Examiner says you're going to need $200 million. You're going to have to get it somewhere, and that's just for the public employees. Forget about the private employees whose services are contracted out.
First of all, that figure that was in the Examiner, I really believe is a back-of-the-napkin type of figure. It's not real, and the people at Department of Public Health have actually come out and said so. The report that they put out actually just talked in glowing terms, the effects, the positive effects of a living wage initiative.
And the Department of Public Health.
Department of Public Health, and that's where the numbers came from.
How many economists are in the Department of Public Health?
Not many. That's exactly my point.
Okay.
So they came up with a figure that I don't know what it's based on. They have to go back and do some more work and develop this. So we don't know right now how much, but I think one of the things, we can look at a couple of different things. I mentioned earlier changing our priorities and how we fund things. In December, there was a multi-million-dollar package of tax incentives and tax cuts given to the business community. Not a peep from anybody as to what is the economic effect of this. I own a business. I, for instance, got a $500 tax break on my city payroll tax. Now, that means my profit essentially has gone up for the year, and I'm paying $250 more now in taxes to the federal and state government in income taxes. So my net gain is $250. That wasn't very good thinking as a part of the Board of Supervisors at that time to give that sort of a tax break to the business community.
Well, there was two sides to that tax credit. There was the $500. There was also a tax credit given if you employed people to not have the businesses pay the payroll gross receipts tax for a period of time to encourage employment.
Why were we doing that? Why did we come up with that idea at the time we came up with that idea?
Somebody just said it's a good thing to do for business. That's all.
Was it necessary? Well, all right. There was a lot more that was happening. We were in the first real bad recession in the state in almost a century. We were also in a situation where we simply were, as a fact, seeing large businesses leave the city because of the cost of doing business here. The ones who could move easily, like the banks and so on, were taking a hike. And some people felt we had to do something about it.
Actually, no. We're right in the middle of an economic boom. As you know, the rents in downtown San Francisco are highest they've ever been. Vacancy rates are low. It is really a great place in which to do business. But curiously, we haven't taken a look also just at another area of tax where we could get some money to pay for this. In the early 90s, property values, according to Prop 13, you or I who own a house, business owners own a building, could apply for a reduction in the value of their property because the property values did go down. Now, a funny thing happened. Homeowners are getting their property taxes, assessments, back up. I'm paying $500 more a year as a result of my house being reassessed back up to current market rate. Downtown business has not. And there were a couple articles that appeared last May, I believe, one in the Chronicle and one in the San Francisco Weekly, that said as much as $100 million per year is not being collected in property taxes in downtown San Francisco. And I went down to the assessor's office yesterday, took a look at the B of A building, just as an example. At its peak value, it was $780 million. 97, 98, it was assessed at around $560 million. They handed me a sheet yesterday that is $511 million, which translates into lost revenues to the city and county of San Francisco for one building of more than $2.5 million.
Well, there have been a number of articles about that, and
taxes?
that's something that ought to be pursued, whether we do this or not. Let's go to Jane in Oakland. Thanks for joining us, Jane. Go ahead.
I would just like to update you or correct your thinking, Mr. Wilson. I believe I heard you say that the statistics say of minimum wage workers that they're either 22 or part-time workers?
That the majority are part-time workers, correct.
Okay. The state of California is the largest employer of part-time workers. They are, in fact, in-home care workers. I would like to praise San Francisco for being the leader, I think perhaps nationally, in what they pay in terms of wages and benefits that are not paid to my worker in Alameda County that is stuck with minimum wage and no benefits.
I wouldn't disagree with what you said, Jane. I'm not sure how it relates to what I said, but but you are in fact correct about that. Maybe perhaps the emotion in that statement as well. Let's talk a bit about the money here. We've really been talking about that. This is a rich city. True. We're doing particularly well right now. Why not reward those who do not have?
Again, it's an economic issue, and it sounds very cold, and it's not meant to sound that way. It's a reality that if a business has to be competitive. Now, if you're talking on the tax side, if people are willing to pay more taxes, that's fine. That will take care of the government side. But as far as the business side, the question is, and I'm not, again, you hit it on the head when you said $5.75 to $14.50 is a lot different than a 50-cent or a dollar increase.
I'll tell you why I asked the question, and I'll tell you why I asked it the way I did, Scott. And I want to make this as clear as I can. The biggest problem I have in this discussion, and Barry, I think that you genuinely believe what you believe about this, and you may be correct about everything that you've said tonight, is that it is couched in question and form as compassion, as fair, as moral. But the argument can be made that taking from people who have earned and have attained something and giving it by government fiat, by a group who decides they're right about something, and giving it to those who don't have as much is of questionable morality in and of itself. That there is an argument there. And the reason I bring it up is because every time he responds the way anyone in this city responds to questions like this. Wow. They're afraid to confront the political reality of the city. Yeah. Political correctness makes them say, I don't want to say that it's bad to give people money, to give a decent wage to folks. Right. Now, at some point, continually arguing that this is compassion, when in fact it's income redistribution. Well, yeah, that's what it is.
That's what it is. But I don't know. Your morals must be a little different than mine, because I just firmly believe that anybody who is willing to work full-time should be able to make a living wage.
But won't the market do that?
No, it doesn't.
Well, could I ask a question? Yes. Barry, you own a business, and you feel that everybody should get the living wage, which has been cited as 13, 14 and a half. In your business, are you able to pay the 13, everybody that works for you is getting $13 to $14.50?
In San Francisco, that is, they are getting far above that. And I have people working in other parts of the country where their actual wage rate is a little bit lower than that, but they get commissions as well, and the combined total is a livable wage.
Okay, now when we come back, let's talk about the union aspect of this, because a lot of people have made a very strong charge here, and we'll see what Barry has to say about that, and our other guest as well. What do you think? 1-800-94-BayTV.
Michelle Blaine. Coming up tonight on the 9 o'clock news, those on the economic ragged edge testify at San Francisco's first public hearing on a proposed living wage. The Board of Regents vote on the governor's proposal to guarantee the top 4% of high school graduates get into the UC system. And the findings that the Bay Area's air is still polluted enough to pose a very real cancer risk. For what's happened today, join Evan White and me for the 9 o'clock news.
Tarantulas are poisonous. Napoleon was short. You can't get a Mercedes for anywhere near $40,000.
Fact is, tarantulas are harmless to humans. Napoleon was tall for his day, and there are 5 Mercedes between $31,000 and $41,000. Hey, you'll learn something new every day.
Attraction you feel is perfectly natural. Your brain also works on electrical impulses. The electric car is here. EV1 from General Motors.
I can't live like this. Have no fear, the Orkin Man is here, and you've been evicted.
Oh, but what if bugs come back?
Then I'll be back, Jack. No charge, of course. See? Satisfaction's guaranteed, or your money back.
Got bugs? Call Orkin for a free inspection and guaranteed protection.
Don't even think about it.
So complicated here, so complicated in California. You see, we got into a little tiny tiff at the start because I brought up the issue of immigration and how it affects this, but who are the people standing down there, immigration rights people, arguing for this living wage?
I saw a white guy first.
Of course, they're that as well. I mean, it's not just a singular issue, but it's there. The Examiner charges that this is a scam by Tom Amiano and by Willie Brown to help the unions who hate contracting out services in the city of San Francisco, and that they simply want to force the hand of the service providers to reduce staff and eventually go out of business.
I think that is a concern as we look at the cost of government, and everybody always screams about how much it's costing us and where's our tax money going. There is a concern about outsourcing all kinds of services and purchasing of products, and major companies do this as well now. It's not just something that is concentrated within city and county governments. And the fact of the matter is, it does get contracted out frequently to places where people are paid lower wages. And so part of our savings in government right now come from that. And I question whether that's appropriate, because are we really saving money by having people make lower wages when we have to pay for public services? You know, you're very concerned about the amount of taxes we all pay. I'm very concerned that my taxpayer dollars are going to fund all of the people that have to go to General Hospital here in San Francisco because they can't afford to buy health insurance.
Robert in Hayward, thanks for joining us. Robert, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm against a living wage because the minute you set a wage any higher, prices go up. If they buy from a restaurant, they buy some clothing, they have to cover it that way, and then people may not be incentive to buy there. I would think make an incentive for the employee to be a better employee by bonuses and other ways besides a standard wage, because some people just say, I'm here for so many hours, and I leave, and I don't care what I do, and they're in this sort of day's sleep, and they don't care about their job. If you make them with incentive, it could make it better where prices don't go up.
Robert, Scott, I wanted to respond. Is he correct? I mean, do prices necessarily have to go up in a thing like this? Is there another way of doing this, as Barry suggests there is?
It seems to me that you can get arguments on both sides, but the simple economics of it are, if costs go up, prices have got to go up. And that just seems like basic economics. One of the things that hasn't been discussed here and that I think is important is the discussion has been around what the living wage is going to be, the $14.50. But what hasn't been discussed also is the ripple effect, where if you have an employee who was making $14.50 and another that was making $5.75, there is a certain wage inflation that those people's wages have to go up also, which increases the cost.
Interesting point. Let's go to Benny in San Francisco. Benny, thanks for joining us.
Hi. Number one, this is the most confusing act to me that I've ever tried to deal with. What I'd like to know, I own a very small business, and there are days I don't make $14.50 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how would I pay someone? And like I said, my business is small. I've had a few good days. Most of my days, if I'm lucky, I'll do $300. You know, but it's small.
Good question, Benny.
So how do you deal with that? Will you exempt little tiny companies like mine that can't raise their prices?
Yeah.
All we are saying, and in response to that, all we are saying is that anybody that is doing business with the city and county of San Francisco has to pay a living wage. Now, if you're a small business and you're not doing business with the city and county of San Francisco, nobody is forcing you to do business. We're saying that these are taxpayer dollars that are being used to purchase goods and services, and that we want to guarantee with the use of those taxpayer dollars that the people that are working are making a living wage.
It's not necessarily true. If you have a lease with the city, you are automatically come under the definition of having to pay that living wage. So if you're a restaurant right now and have a lease with the city, or another business that has a lease with the city, you're going to have to pay that living wage, because it takes in leases, and it also takes in, if you hire somebody with the expectation of not paying that increased tax, you're now going to come under it, and you may end up paying more with the living wage than you got in credit from the tax.
I just have to respond. There's an old phrase in the business community called location, location, location. And the most obvious one, we'll go back to the airlines out at the airport here. Are they going to pick up and go up to the Marin Headlands and run their business? No way. We've built this
all of
facility.
Redevelopment is not location, location. In the
but
Bayview Hunters Point and other areas around the city where there are leases with the city, that is not necessarily what would be considered a prime location.
Not all, but there is significant businesses that are operating on the port facilities, Pier 39, that sort of thing, where we really have provided some economic value for these people.
But you would agree there are a number of other businesses that don't fit that criteria.
And I believe that in order to be able to accommodate that, we are working on trying to phase this in, so it's not going to hit people immediately.
Let me take a last break here. 1-800-94-BayTV.
Attention. Fought on the streets.
I've a warrant for your arrest. Don't move.
We fight that war every day.
When it comes to the law, everybody's the same.
There's a fine line between right and wrong.
He said you threatened to kill him.
Law and Order on A&E.
It would be criminal to miss it.
Presented locally by Copenhagen Fine Furniture. Quality, style, and selection. Copenhagen. Van Ness at Washington, San Francisco.
Planning a vacation? Well, take a load off in South Park, your personal vacation getaway, where the folks are friendly.
You're not spelling out
down nicely. You're better than ever.
The staff is courteous.
Damn, woman. I just gave you sweet loving 5 minutes ago.
And the wildlife is unique.
So sick, dude.
So bring the whole family. Hey, I'm on TV! And visit South Park, only at Comedy Central.
ZM, corner of 4th and Howard, San Francisco.
Another first. We're putting Honda on the map. The largest selection of Hondas in San Francisco is now available through the all-new Honda of Serramonte, just north of El Camino Real on Serramonte Boulevard. The largest selection of Civics, Passports, CRVs, and Accords through the all-new Honda of Serramonte. The all-new Honda of Serramonte has opened up, and the prices of Hondas has finally come down. Honda of Serramonte, just north of El Camino Real on Serramonte Boulevard. A member of First America Automotive. anyauto.com.
Let's go right to a call. Jim in Vallejo. Thanks for joining us. Jim, a solution?
Yes. What the living wage is trying to do is help the poor.
Sure.
And the way to help the poor is to restructure income taxes. The foreign countries I have visited have always explained to me that in their country, if you don't work, you don't get a check.
Right.
The way they help their low-income people is by structuring income taxes favorably for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we should do in this country.
Well, we do that, Jim. And a lot of people don't think we do an adequate job of it, but we do that. The people under $40,000 a year with a family in this country pay very little in income tax. The trouble is that we've also structured a layer of taxation that's, in fact, I can give you some statistics on this, but the fact is that people under $40,000 a year pay approximately 5% of the taxes. That's the income taxes, federal, state, and local in the country. Let me ask you about that. Is there a way to adjust to take care of these things without having to do it city to city, county to county, so that you're making San Francisco again an island unto itself, and you worry whether or not United Airlines might go to Kansas City?
Sure, right. Well, first of all, I should just comment just on the capital gains taxes are lower than the regular income tax rate. People that don't work for the money but are basically investors. And I think that the caller is quite right. We do need to take a look at our various tax rates and how to make things a little bit more equal. Is it appropriate when you're working for a living that your tax rate is higher than somebody who is basically investing capital?
Which is, by the way, hard work.
Well,
I know that it's progressive love the notion that people who own businesses aren't working.
No, I'm not talking owning businesses. I'm just saying money in the stock market. This stuff that's, paper
I'd argue
money
about that too, but it's silly to argue about this. Scott, what do you want to see happen here?
As far as the living wage proposals?
What do you want to see the city-county do?
I would like to see them address the issues as far as the amount that's covered. I'd like to see issues addressed, the rent issues that I mentioned, the tax issues. I think you're sending a disjointed message where on one side you're saying if you hire somebody, we'll give you a credit, but if you take that credit, we're going to charge you this minimum wage. I think that needs to be changed. I think we need to look into the aspect of it being a contract or a purchasing agreement. I think that's kind of unique in the city. I think there's a task force set up right now, and I think it's important that the task force have the time to come up with a solution, taking all the opinions that are out there and putting something together that can work with San Francisco.
And I think that our other guest would agree, Barry, that there has to be a lot of discussion on this. It has to be polished, the totals and where it's going to come from and everything else. And clearly that was the case tonight. We'll be right back with Take Action. Thank you both.
Hi, I'm Evan White, and coming up right after Pete in our 9 o'clock news, the FBI announces they have found the missing car belonging to 3 missing women in the Sierra. The Oakland landlord busted today for conditions in his building said to be unfit for anyone to endure. The UC Regents give the nod to the governor's admission plan, even though few think it'll make any difference. Plus, we'll take you live to Cal's NIT playoff game tonight in Berkeley. So join Michelle Blaine and me for the 9 o'clock news. It's coming up right after Take Issue.
Need to open an IRA fast, but you just can't get away? Call Schwab and ask for IRA overnight.
FedEx!
It comes with a simple do-it-yourself kit and FedEx delivery at no charge.
Hi, FedEx!
So now you can open an IRA quickly, painlessly,
Pizza!
and from the comfort of home.
Some folks think my Subaru Outback here is just for exotic adventures. Truth is, it's good for the everyday stuff too. You know, like running down to the store, picking up the mail. The secret, full-time all-wheel drive. Something you just won't find in a Cherokee or a Blazer. Comes in handy when you say, wait for a hair appointment.
Right with you, mate. You know why I wear a hat.
Escape to Sheraton's Hawaii. Rooms start at just $150. Stay 5 nights and the 5th night is free. Call 1-800-782-9488.
San Francisco Living Wage Coalition, Barry's group, at 415-243-8132. And, of course, this is an ongoing debate. They're debating it right now. Small Business Network at 415-621-0146, and their website at sfsbn.org. And remember, they're not necessarily against this notion, but they want to see a good deal more debate about how it's paid for and the rest. We have some emails for you tonight on the issue of medicinal pot, as we discussed it last night. Lynn, who says sick people shouldn't have to wait for a bunch of bureaucrats to confirm what I already know: marijuana is good medicine. Well, it wasn't bureaucrats, it was science that looked at that, Lynn, just to clarify that, but it is the bureaucrats who will decide, obviously. Jane, I think it's not only way overdue for the federal government to allow use of marijuana, it's time we look at take a good hard look at what the drug war and prohibition have done to this country. Good point. And Hoffman, if military forces were not to be used in response to civil unrest, why are there multiple field manuals and handbooks for anti-riot and civilian protest? This is on Urban Warrior. Why should you also prepare for terrorism when worldwide terrorism has dropped 30% since the 1960s? Even if 70% of it is left, it would seem to present a problem. And why should you prepare for urban warfare when we are allied with most of the industrialized nations that would have cities similar to Oakland in the East Bay? Certainly the major areas of conflict in the world are not as urbanized as Oakland. That's it for tonight. Now, tomorrow night, Jan Wall will be here. Talking pictures. We'll see you on Monday.
At Hayward Ford, lowest Ford prices and a huge selection have made Hayward Ford #1 sales leader in Northern California. Now featuring the all-new '99 Ford Ranger XL for just $94.88. Here's the new '99 Explorer Sport, new 2-door model, $17,988. A new '99 4-door Escort for an amazing $89.88. Lowest price anywhere for a new family sedan. At the big Ford store, Hayward Ford, Mission Boulevard in Hayward.
Expand your universe, your mind, even your waistline. It's easy with Backroads on BayTV, every day at 5. Let Doug McConnell and friends broaden your horizon with travel tips, helpful hints, and first-hand stories of fun and adventure around the Bay and beyond. Every day at 5, take a trip down the Bay Area's Backroads on BayTV, your TV, cable channel 35.
I'm Tim Russert of Meet the Press. Bay Area residents see firsthand how information technologies are stringing a tighter web across the globe. As our world gets smaller, there's a need to know more about today's news than just the headlines. That's why Meet the Press takes the time to go in-depth into stories. You just don't hear about them, you understand them.
Watch Meet the Press Sunday at 1 on BayTV, your TV, cable channel 35.
Are you an organ and tissue donor? If you haven't told your family, you're not. Talk with your family today. Make sure they know your decision so there's no question later. Call 1-800-355-SHARE for a free brochure.
The Cantor Center for the Arts at Stanford presents Picasso, Graphic Magician, prints from the Norton Simon Museum, now through March 28th.
You're watching BayTV. BayTV is your TV.
Tonight on the 9 o'clock news, the discovery of a car the FBI says confirms their fears of foul play for 3 women missing in the Sierra.
the region's move to okay a way to get more minorities into the UC system, though that won't likely help on the Berkeley campus.
The full house tonight of those who make it very easy to understand why they want a living wage.
These stories and all the day's news on this Thursday, March 18th,